What is up? What is up, YouTube? Hey, Cassidy drops jaw-dropping evidence against Diddy. Courtroom in turmoil as attorney rushed to response. Cassidy, the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Oh my God, Cassidy's so beautiful, man. She's a pretty little girl. I gotta admit that. She's a pretty little girl. And Diddy, I cannot believe you. Oh my God, I can't believe what you did to this girl. And it's undeniable. It's on video. And it's been on the internet, all over. That's what broke all this stuff to say this is enough. Enough is enough. Y'all need to see this. Disclaimer, the story presented in this video is based on currently, y'all don't need to read that. Disclaimer. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Uncle Mike got some snacks in front of me. I'm getting hungry, so let's check this bad boy out. Here we go.
I've held this in for so long. Too long. Every day, every night. It's been like a weight on my chest, pressing down until I couldn't breathe. I told myself to stay quiet, to keep my head down, to survive. But survival isn't living, and I can't survive like this anymore. You think you know him. You see the smile, the charm, the man who walks into a room and owns it without saying a word. But that's not who he is. That's not the man I knew. The man I knew. He wasn't a man. He was a monster. I'm not here to talk about the parties, the money, the fame. I'm not here to talk about the life you see on Instagram or in magazines. I'm here to talk about the darkness. The things he did when the cameras were off. The things he made me do. The things he made me watch. I was his property, not his partner, not his girlfriend. His property. He owned me. He told me that every day. You're nothing without me. I made you. I can destroy you. And he meant it. He loved it. He loved watching me break. He loved knowing I couldn't leave. But today, I'm taking my power back. Today, I'm telling the truth. And the truth is, this isn't just about me. This is about all the women who came before me. All the women who stayed silent because they were afraid. All the women who disappeared because they dared to speak up. I have evidence. Proof of what he's done. Proof of the lies, the manipulation, the abuse. Proof of the things he thought he could bury forever. But you can't bury the truth, not forever. This is just the beginning. And by the time I'm done, the world will see him for what he really is. A predator, a manipulator, a man who thought he was untouchable. But he's not untouchable anymore. And I'm not afraid anymore. You want to know what he did? You want to know the truth? It starts with control. It starts with fear. He didn't just want to own me. He wanted to break me. He wanted to take everything that made me who I am and crush it. And he did. For years he did. I remember the first time he hit me. It wasn't a slap. It wasn't some impulsive moment of anger. It was calculated, cold. He looked me in the eye and said, "This is what happens when you don't listen." And then he did it again and again. But it wasn't just the physical pain. It was the words, the way he would tear me down piece by piece until I didn't even recognize myself. You're worthless. You're nothing. No one will ever want you but me. And I believed him. I believed every word. He didn't just hurt me. He hurt the people around me, my family, my friends, anyone who tried to get close to me. He made sure I was isolated, alone, dependent on him for everything. And then there were the parties, the ones you've heard about, the ones where the rich and powerful would gather, where the rules didn't apply. I was there. I saw what happened. I saw the things no one talks about, the things no one wants to believe. He didn't just abuse me. He documented it. He recorded everything. Every moment of pain, every moment of humiliation. He kept it all, like trophies, like proof of his power. But the worst part wasn't what he did to me. It was what he did to others. The women who came before me. The women who came after. The ones who didn't make it out. The ones who disappeared. I know their names. I know their stories. And I know what happened to them. He thought he could silence them forever. He thought he could silence me. But he was wrong. I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for them. For every woman who couldn't speak. For every woman who was too afraid. For every woman who didn't make it out alive. This isn't just about me. This is about justice. This is about holding him accountable for everything he's done, for the lives he's destroyed, for the pain he's caused. And I have proof. I have evidence. I have recordings, documents, photographs, things he thought he could bury, things he thought no one would ever see. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of what he might do, because the truth is stronger than his lies. The truth is stronger than his fear. And the truth is, he's not untouchable. Not anymore. This is just the beginning. And by the time I'm done, the world will see him for what he really is. A predator, a manipulator, a man who thought he was above the law. But he's not above the law. And he's not above justice. This is for every woman who couldn't speak. This is for every woman who was silenced. This is for every woman who didn't make it out. This is for me. And this is just the beginning. You think you know the whole story, but you don't. There's more. So much more. He didn't just hurt me. He hurt so many others. And some of them never got out. Some of them are still trapped. There's a place, a mansion, hidden away where no one would think to look. It's not on any map. It doesn't show up in any records, but it exists. I've been there. I've seen it. He called it his sanctuary, but it was nothing holy. It was a prison, a place where he kept women, and not just women, men too, people who crossed him, people who knew too much, people he wanted to disappear. I remember the first time he took me there. He blindfolded me, told me it was for my own safety, that it was somewhere special, somewhere only the privileged few could go. But when the blindfold came off, all I saw was darkness, concrete walls, locked doors, faces staring back at me, hollow and broken. The mansion wasn't what you'd expect. From the outside, it looked like luxury, gated, manicured, polished. But behind those doors, it was a labyrinth, hallways that twisted and turned, rooms with no windows, basements that seemed to stretch on forever. I got lost in there more than once, and every time I did, I'd find something worse than before. There were rooms with chains on the walls, rooms with beds bolted to the floor, rooms where the soundproofing was so thick you could scream and no one would hear you. I know because I screamed. I screamed until my voice gave out. He treated them like objects, like props. He would parade them in front of his guests, show them off like trophies. Some of them were there for days, some for months, some. I don't think they ever left. And it wasn't just the physical walls that trapped us. It was the rules, the unspoken rules that hung in the air, suffocating. You didn't speak unless spoken to. You didn't look him in the eye unless he allowed it. You didn't breathe without his permission. He controlled everything. When they ate, when they slept, if they could speak, he had rules, strict rules, and if you broke them, There were consequences. I saw it. I saw what he did to them, the punishment, the cruelty. He made examples of them to keep the others in line. Sometimes he'd bring in his friends, powerful people who wanted a taste of control. They'd walk those halls like it was some kind of twisted theme park. They'd pick and choose, like we were nothing but merchandise. And he'd watch. He loved to watch. He'd call it entertainment, but there was nothing entertaining about it. Not for us, not for the ones who had to live it. It was torture, plain and simple, psychological, physical, emotional. He broke us down until there was nothing left. And the worst part? He filmed it. He documented everything. He kept files, recordings, videos. I've seen them. I've held them in my hands. He thought they would protect him, that they were leverage, but they're evidence that he thought would never see the light of day. He showed me some of those tapes, forced me to watch them. He said it was a lesson, a reminder of what happens when you defy him, when you try to leave, when you think, even for a second, that you can get away. There were tapes of women I knew, women I'd met at his parties, women who smiled and laughed and pretended everything was fine. But behind closed doors, when the cameras weren't public, their faces changed. The fear, the desperation. I saw it all. I wasn't just a victim. I was a witness. I saw it all. I heard the screams. I felt the fear. And I knew, deep down, that if I didn't play along, if I didn't do exactly what he wanted, I would end up just like them. He used to tell me that he was untouchable, that no one would ever believe me, that even if I did get out, if I did find the courage to speak, his lawyers, his money, his connections would make sure no one ever heard me, but not anymore. I'm done being afraid. I'm done staying silent. I'm done letting him win. I have the proof. I have the names. I have everything he thought he could hide. There are ledgers, handwritten logs of every person who went in and out of that mansion. Dates, times, names. Some of those names you'd recognize. Others you'd never expect. People who helped him. People who knew and did nothing. People who made sure the doors stayed locked and the cameras stayed off. This mansion, it's not just a place. It's a graveyard, a monument to his power and his cruelty. And I'm tearing it down, brick by brick, truth by truth. There were secret rooms in that mansion, rooms behind false walls, panic rooms, he called them. But they weren't for safety. They were for hiding things, hiding people. He'd stash them away when the wrong person showed up. When someone came asking questions. When the authorities got too close. I've been in those rooms. I've sat in the darkness, knowing that on the other side of the wall, people were laughing, partying, living their lives while I was trapped. I've scratched my nails down the walls until they bled, trying to find a way out. And it wasn't just me. There were others. I can still see their faces, still hear their voices. They'd whisper to me in the dark, asking if I thought we'd ever get out, if anyone would ever find us. He told us that no one cared, that no one was looking, that the world had already forgotten us. And for a long time, I believed him. I believed that I was invisible, that we all were. But he was wrong. I'm not invisible. They are not invisible. I see them. I remember them. And I won't stop until the world remembers them too. For every woman he locked away, for every person he hurt, for every life he ruined. I'm not just telling my story. I'm telling theirs. And this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. because when I'm done, he won't have anywhere left to hide. Not in his mansion, not behind his money, not behind his lies. I've kept records. I've kept journals. I've kept everything. The things he thought I destroyed. The things he thought he could erase. I've hidden them in places he'd never think to look, with people he'd never suspect. I see you, Sean. I see you for what you really are. And now, so does everyone else. You can't silence me. You can't bury the truth. Not anymore. Not when I have nothing left to lose. This is for every woman who didn't make it out. For every person who still hears the echoes of those locked doors. For every soul trapped in the darkness of that mansion. This is my story, but it's also theirs, and I promise you, I won't stop until justice is served. The world deserves to know. They deserve to see the real you, and they will, because this is just the beginning. And when the truth finally comes out, when the world sees everything you've tried so hard to hide, you'll understand what real fear is. Not the kind of fear you used to control us, but the kind of fear that comes when you know your time's up, when you know the walls are closing in, when you know that no amount of money, no amount of power, no amount of lies can save you. I'm not afraid of you anymore. And soon, you'll be the one who's afraid. This is for me. This is for them. This is for the truth. And this is just the beginning. You think it couldn't get worse. You think you've heard the darkest parts of the story. But the truth is there's more, so much more. What I've told you already is only the surface. Beneath it lies something even more sinister. The mansion wasn't just a prison for women and those who crossed him. It was a maze, a twisted labyrinth designed to hide secrets. And the worst of those secrets lay underground. There were tunnels, long dark corridors that ran beneath the mansion. They stretched for miles, winding under the estate, leading to rooms and chambers no one was supposed to find. You couldn't tell where you were down there. Every wall looked the same. Every turn led deeper into the darkness. He called them his safe passages, but they weren't for safety. They were for hiding things, hiding people, the ones he didn't want anyone to see, the ones he wanted to keep forever. It wasn't just women. There were children, young girls, young boys, minors who had no idea where they were or how they'd gotten there. Some of them were runaways. Some had been lured in with promises of fame, of opportunity, of safety. But all of them were trapped. I saw them. I heard them. I spoke to some of them. They were terrified, their faces pale, their voices barely above a whisper. They asked me if I was there to save them, and I didn't have an answer, because back then, I couldn't even save myself. He used those tunnels to move them, to keep them hidden when guests came over, when the authorities got too close. He had secret doors, false walls, passages that led directly into those underground rooms. You could be standing in a lavish bedroom, surrounded by wealth and luxury, and just a few feet away, behind a wall, children were being held in cages. They were malnourished. They were neglected. They were alone. He didn't see them as children. He saw them as currency, as leverage. He'd use them to control people, to blackmail them, to ensure their silence. He knew that some of his guests had dark appetites, and he provided for them. He made sure their secrets stayed hidden, and in return, they protected his. I remember one girl. She couldn't have been more than 13. She was so small, so fragile. She told me her name was Sarah, but I don't know if that was her real name. She said she'd been there for months, that she hadn't seen the sun in so long she couldn't remember what it looked like. She told me about the others, about how sometimes they would take one of them away and they'd never come back. She said they called it going to sleep. She didn't know where they went. None of us did. But deep down, we all knew. He had a system, a network of people who helped him, guards, staff, drivers, people who turned a blind eye or helped him make sure no one escaped. They'd shuffle the kids through the tunnels, put them in cars with tinted windows, and they'd be gone. No names, no records, just gone. And if anyone asked questions, if anyone got too close, he'd make sure they disappeared too. He had resources, connections. He could wipe away a person's existence with a phone call. I saw it happen more than once. He told me that the world was full of lost people, that no one would miss a few more, that the kids he took didn't have anyone who cared about them, that he was giving them a purpose. But the truth was, he was stealing their futures, their lives, their souls. He had places he'd send them, houses in other states, other countries, places where the laws couldn't touch him, where his money could buy silence. I heard him on the phone, arranging transport, making deals, trading lives like they were nothing more than merchandise. And all the while, he'd walk the halls of that mansion, smiling, laughing, living his life like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't keeping kids in cages just a few feet below his feet. There were rooms down there, rooms with locks on the outside, rooms with nothing but a mattress on the floor, rooms where the light bulbs had burned out and no one bothered to replace them. Those kids sat in the dark, waiting, hoping, praying that someone would find them. But no one came. No one ever came. He used fear to control them, told them that if they ran, if they tried to escape, he'd find them, that he had eyes everywhere, that the world outside was worse than what they had with him. And some of them believed it. Some of them stopped trying to leave, stopped trying to fight. But not all of them. There were a few who held on, who kept their hope alive. They'd pass notes to each other, whisper plans in the dark. They had a system, a code. And when they realized I wasn't like the others, when they realized I wanted out just as much as they did, they started including me. We tried to escape. Once, we got as far as the end of one of the tunnels. I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a door. It was heavy, metal, and when we opened it, fresh air rushed in, real air, not the recycled, stale air from the vents. It smelled like freedom. But we never made it. His guards found us, dragged us back. He made an example of the ones who led the way. I don't know what happened to them. I never saw them again. He told me they'd been sent away, but I knew better. We all did. After that, everything changed. He got stricter, harsher. He shut down parts of the mansion, closed off the tunnels, moved some of the kids to places even I couldn't find. He said it was for security, but we knew it was punishment. He used to tell me that the world outside was a lie, that if I ever escaped, if I ever spoke out, no one would believe me, that the truth was too dark, too twisted, that people would rather believe the mask he wore than the monster he was. But not anymore. Okay. I'm done being afraid. I'm done staying silent. I'm done letting him win. I have the proof. I have the names. I have everything he thought he could hide. This isn't just about me. It's not just about the women. It's about those kids. It's about the ones who never got out, the ones who lost their lives in the darkness of those tunnels, the ones who were too scared to scream because they knew no one would hear them. I have the evidence, the tapes, the records. I know where those tunnels lead. I know what lies beneath that mansion. And I won't stop until the world knows, too. I'm speaking for them, for every child who cried themselves to sleep in that darkness, for every lost soul he tried to erase, for every name he thought he could bury. You can't hide anymore, Sean. You can't cover this up. The truth is coming, and it's coming fast. And when it does, those tunnels won't be your escape. They'll be your prison. I see you. I see you for what you really are. And now, so does everyone else. This is just the beginning. And when I'm done, when every secret is brought to light, when every truth is finally heard, you'll understand what real fear is. Not the kind of fear you used to control us, but the kind of fear that comes when you realize your empire of lies is crumbling. When you realize the shadows you hid in are gone. I'm not afraid of you anymore, and soon you'll be the one who's afraid. This is for me. This is for them. This is for the truth, and this is just the beginning. You think the darkness ended with him. You think that once you've seen the monster, the story is over. But it wasn't just him. It wasn't just Sean. The truth is, his darkness wasn't his alone. It spread like poison, and those closest to him drank it willingly. His son, the one who smiled just like him, who walked into a room with the same confidence, the same swagger. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. He learned from the best, or should I say, the worst. I remember the first time I saw it, that same coldness in his eyes, that same hunger for control. Sean had groomed him well. He taught him that women were possessions, that power meant taking what you wanted, that rules didn't apply to men like them. He was young, but he knew. He saw what his father did. He watched the way Sean treated me, treated the other women, and instead of horror, instead of compassion, he saw an example, a blueprint for how to be a man. There were parties, always the parties, but when Sean was busy, when his attention was elsewhere, his son would pick up where he left off. He had his own room in that mansion, his own slice of the nightmare, and he used it. I saw the way he looked at the girls, the way he'd corner them, press them up against the walls. He had his father's charm, his father's power, but he wielded it like a weapon. He didn't need to use force, not at first. He'd smile, offer them a drink, a line of something to help them relax. He'd make them feel special, wanted, and then, when they were too far gone to say no, he'd strike. His voice would change, his face would harden, and the girls who thought they were safe realized too late that they were trapped. He wasn't as careful as Sean. He didn't have the same discipline. He'd lose his temper. He'd lash out. I remember one girl. Her name was Lily. She was just 19. She thought she was coming to a party. She thought it was a chance to meet people, to network, to be seen. But he saw her first. He pulled her into his room, locked the door, and when she came out, she had bruises. Her dress was torn. Her eyes were empty. She told me he hit her, that he laughed when she cried, that he said no one would believe her. She wanted to leave. I told her to run, but before she could, he found out. He told his father, and Sean made sure she disappeared. I don't know where she went. I don't know if she's still alive. But I remember the way he looked at me afterward, like it was a game, like he had won. And it wasn't just women. He had his hands in everything: drugs, money. Sean taught him how to manipulate, how to coerce, how to turn people into pawns. He'd bring girls to the mansion, tell them they were safe, that it was just a party, that they could leave whenever they wanted. But they couldn't. No one ever could. He had a temper, a rage that burned just beneath the surface. If a girl said no, if she pushed back, he'd snap. I saw him throw a girl against a wall once. She hit her head so hard she couldn't stand up. He just stepped over her, walked away like nothing had happened. And Sean, he didn't care. He encouraged it. He'd say things like, "That's my boy," or "You have to teach them their place." He was proud of him, proud that his son had inherited his cruelty. There were whispers, staff who had seen too much, guests who'd caught glimpses of the truth, but they stayed quiet. Sean's reach was too long, his power too strong, and his son, he hid behind it, knew that as long as his father was there, he was untouchable. I tried to protect them, the girls. I'd tell them to stay away from him, to avoid being alone. But it was never enough. He had ways of getting what he wanted. Drugs in their drinks, lies that led them into empty rooms, promises that turned into threats. And when they cried, when they fought back, he'd call for his father's guards. They'd drag the girls away. I heard their screams. I still hear them. He was learning to become just like Sean, a new generation of abuse, a legacy of violence. And Sean fed it, nurtured it, made sure his son knew that the world was theirs to take, that people were just stepping stones on their path to power. There were nights when I'd hear them laughing together, talking about the girls like they were nothing, comparing stories, sharing secrets. It was like a game to them, a twisted competition, and the world outside. They saw a father and son, a dynasty. They had no idea what was really happening behind those walls. They had no idea that the smiling young man they saw on social media was the same one who locked girls in rooms and left them there for days. He's not a child. He's not innocent. He knew exactly what he was doing. He made choices. He chose to follow in his father's footsteps. He chose to become part of the darkness. And now it's time for the truth to come out. It's time for the world to see him for who he really is, for what he's done. He can't hide behind his father anymore. He can't hide behind money, behind fame, behind the lies. I have proof. I have names. I have stories. The girls who survived, the ones who escaped, they're ready to speak. They're ready to tell the world what really happened. And he can't silence us all. Not this time. Not anymore.
Wow. That's crazy, man. I'm back. Man. This is going on worldwide, y'all. It's getting worse. It's getting worse, man. I cannot believe that. I heard a video and I saw the guy going to different countries, very poor countries, where the women are having babies to sell to traffickers. The women are having babies to sell to traffickers. Which remind me, there's a video out that I'm doing so many videos, man. Trump he closing down that border, man. He closing down. I think some people, as we speak, I think some people has gotten in trouble at the border. I'm gonna try to find a video on that, man. We've been covering so much Angie Stone, the Puffy, Jaguar Wright, big homie CC in another lawsuit. Dude, I can't keep up, but I'm trying. Uncle Mike trying. Look here. I'm gonna get on up out of here. Hey, y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.